rank, or are you just called Chief? Chief. Chief Puglisi, John Puglisi, and our Major, Peter Frang. They have been working with me. I'll just go ahead and give you guys a little bit of background on how I've been brought into the fold since I've been in office last December. It was brought to my attention pretty early on as we entered budget season here in Brookfield that we were in desperate need of a communication system overhaul for our public health and safety. Our current system is an analog system from 1986, and if that thing fails today, we have no means to communicate across our emergency services. So it's just a pretty big deal that we're able to address that, and the voters, we took it to referendum, and the voters approved it. So
what exactly did they approve?
I'm going to let the major speak to that. It's a system that will revamp or replace the 1986 system. It has nothing to do with 5G whatsoever, but it's a mechanism for all of our emergency services to be able to talk across a common platform, and then it ties into the other towns, which right now we don't have the capability of doing. So if there's a collective need, where oftentimes these guys find themselves as backup or assistance to our surrounding neighbors. For example, there was an incident not too long ago in Newtown. Things happen all the time, especially with our police and firemen, where we respond to things outside of just the Brookfield border. So, for example, there was a drowning at Chicken Rock in New Milford, and currently we just don't have the means to be able to communicate with other towns. So, you want to add to that, Pete?
No, it's just like the first selectman said, it's a town-wide communications across fire, police, EMS, schools as well, and
Public Works,
all the agencies in town, as well as our mutual aid partners. And the current system is at end of life. So they are looking, when we have failures at towers and sites, they have to go on eBay to find the parts to fix it. So that's why this was so important to get this done. And there are parts of this town where our radios don't work, which is a public safety for our officers, firemen, EMTs.
Our system is analog and digital, not cellular. Not looking to upgrade cellular system.
everything that these guys do is handheld through Motorola, and it ties into the common hub at the police department. Do you guys want to just introduce yourselves so we know who we're talking to here?
Ellen Valley. Field near the high school.
Near the high, you live near the high school?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sabina Scherner, I'm from Sherman, Connecticut.
Okay. Susan Hagar, I'm from Sherman as well, and we both have been trying to discuss with our selectmen for maybe 4 years about 5G the concerns.
Nadia Aniki, I'm also from Brookfield.
When Arnett, Brookfield.
Senator Ramos Herrero, Brookfield.
Joan Colson from Brookfield. I've been involved in working on this for quite a few years because I had personal tragedy in my family based on the science. I believe it was due to the electromagnetism from a cell phone years back. And I just got involved in finding out more about this, doing a lot of research, really looking at the science, reading the science, not just being told about it, and came to conclusions that the 5G network is going to be very much more intense, different from what we have now, very close to homes and schools, and I just brought in a absolutely totally current article. I'd like to share it with you guys. And it's about there's been many groups of scientists and doctors and established people who do the research and who look at the research and who tell us what the negative effects are, especially on children. And that's why I'm here, because I don't want it in our town, I don't want it near my house, and I don't want it affecting everybody, not just the children, but the children are most vulnerable. And that's why I'm here. Oscar next.
Hi, my name is Pasca Naden. I'm in Easton, Connecticut. Can you hear me okay?
somewhat.
It's breaking up just a little.
Okay, hopefully we'll get that fixed. Hold on one second. Let me just check out the speakers here.
It's fine.
It's good.
Yeah, it's good enough. It's better
Keep
here.
talking.
Well, I'm in Easton. I started, I'm a co-founder of a group called Connecticut for Responsible Technology, because we saw a trend in 2019 where our legislators were passing bills to accelerate dangerous radiation in our communities without any commission on health and safety. And to the police sergeant and to the other officer, I totally appreciate where you're coming from. I think it's very important that we do have emergency services, and that you do have the tools in order to respond as first responders. So I totally respect that and appreciate that. And in that, we need to balance the emissions of pollution. And this is what we've been trying to do, is try to get organized to figure out what is the best solution, and really understand what helps the whole community to respond to this technology in a responsible way. So I used to work in a technology company for over 30+ years. I was impacted by radiation myself personally. So I started digging and researching and reading beyond what commercials and beyond what telecommunication companies tell us, to really understand the facts and cofactors and impact to not only our biological systems, but our environment. And just like you would not want a smokestack in your backyard, this is what we need to do, is treat this technology as a pollutant. And so we have to just look for other solutions that are available. So I thank you for this time. I wanted to, I put together a presentation because a lot of the information that I've been reading over the last 2.5 years, I met Joan in 2019 because she was a warrior leading the cause, and I joined her forces here to just try to educate and influence legislators and influence towns with facts, not opinions, and with law, okay, that they could be basing their decisions on. So as we were looking at this, I look at applications to really understand, is there a need and is there a gap? All right, and we really need to understand what is a gap and where there is a gap. I may need to come out and do some more analysis based on today's call, but I just wanted to share what we did with a group of Brookfield residents. So if you're still hearing me okay, can I just proceed, or do you want to say some additional words?
Sorry, I was just asking if I could take this, Pasca. Is that okay?
This is
Were you
being
recording?
Oh, you're recording it?
Yeah, now, Daniel, this beautiful room, I have to say, Tara, you've got a beautiful conference room with great technology. We may have to steal Daniel to do this in other towns, but this is really wonderful.
Please don't.
Daniel, you're up for grabs, honey. So, if there are no more questions, I just want to, here's what I want to do. I mean, first of all, Jennifer gave me this beautiful picture of Brookfield. And I think you should be really proud of what Brookfield has become and is. And we just want to keep that, intact for all of the community members. Let's see if I could do this. Okay. And I'm sorry I'm not there physically in person. I just didn't want to deal with any trees being down or any issues because of this storm.
Yeah, if I could just interrupt for 1 second. If you gentlemen have to leave at any point, please feel free to do so. I know your time is very precious.
And please, you could get my name and number from Joan if you have to leave. And I would love to continue the conversation on emergency systems, and just to make sure that we've addressed your questions, and more importantly, what options you have and things like that as it relates to technology. So what I wanted to do today, and I reviewed some of these charts with a few of the folks here as I was trying to figure out, because I'm in Easton, I don't live in Brookfield, but trust me, I travel through Brookfield. And so we're all connected. So what happens in Brookfield really impacts all of us, not only from an emergency supplies situation, but basically from enjoying Connecticut situation. We all want to enjoy every part of Connecticut and travel through those areas of Connecticut in a safe way. So I want to talk briefly about what the application I saw online, this application under docket 512. I want to share with you some of the gap analysis that we used an instrument. I didn't go around making phone calls. Trust me, that is one way to determine if there's gaps, but I used an instrument I'll share with you. I wanted to share, depending on time, some of the research that we have. And I know Joan and the different members that have attended Brookfield in the past meetings have shared a lot of details, scientific peer-reviewed studies on why what we're talking about is real. It's not a conspiracy, and it's all fact. Actually, even from the beginning of radar. Okay, let me see if someone's trying to get through this meeting. So anyway, now I'll turn that off. I was just waiting for one more person to say if they're going to be in person there. Okay, and then something about let's rethink wireless. We've been brainwashed, and I'll say that. We've been marketed to around wireless as being the only solution. And trust me, it is not. And it's not the best solution. If you want speed and security and reliability, no matter what kind of stuff is happening out there in our environment, there are better solutions. And it really begins with the word fiber. So let me go. So one of the things I did is I took a look at your application, okay? And I actually read the application for the most part, even though these things are really quite boring. If anybody's read them, they know that, okay? So in looking at this application, as you can see, they're saying, AT&T is saying the public need for a tower for wireless. They don't really make a lot of remarks around the emergency response. So I'm kind of glad you're here because I'd like to, I want to learn more about that even after this meeting. But they were talking about, the essential services. Let me just move this over on the screen. They're talking about a significant gap, which I've gone through all their files. I have not seen the data. So maybe when they have a public hearing on November 3rd, they'll share with us the results. All right. But then they're also talking about this proposed facility to provide services to Danbury and Northern Bethel. Now, I have a problem with that if I were living in Brookfield. Okay. You will be exposing yourself to very high levels of radiation pollution to service other towns. If they need those in other towns, don't you think that they should be putting the infrastructure there versus smack in the middle of Brookfield? Just as a question, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just asking the question. This is in the front of their proposal, okay?
I have thought about that, just so you know.
Okay, we have to be selfish. This is radiation pollution. Again, think of a smokestack, but you can't see it, you can't smell it, and you can't feel it, except there are people that are feeling it and are being locked into their homes because it's excessive. Okay.
If I could just interject real quick, if let's just say this tower wasn't coming for the private sector's use to facilitate 5G or any other instrumentation, I just want to be very clear that we would still need a tower for our system upgrade, again, which is not 5G driven at all.
Not this communication is the tower?
Yes.
And is there a way to do the fiber?
footing the bill would be the town.
Right. Last year, as you may know, they had a proposition to put a tower on our public works site, which isn't too far from the 60 Vale Road location, and the Board of Selectmen at the time turned it down.
AT&T wanted to put a tower on the public works.
Do they prefer private property for a reason?
I have no idea.
Well, they have more poles.
They basically were like, okay,
Let's find somewhere else.
Brookfield will go a quarter of a mile behind there.
So they can put up anything.
So
they
at
want.
that time, you can put a
If
tower.
it passes zoning, but from what I understand, the state can still trump zoning denial.
Your tower could still go on public works for the firemen
Yeah.
and all of everyone else. You could still have a separate tower.
Yeah.
And another tower couldn't hold what you need, since there's a tower 2,000
Another
feet
tower
away.
could accommodate, but there are no other towers.
Okay, we're going to show you all the towers that are available that we
And
took
we can
readings
speak to
from.
those as well. I
Okay,
just wanted to be clear.
so again, back to this proposal. They also state, these are their words, I just copy pasted them here. They will start with the equipment of AT&T first, okay? And then up to 3 additional carriers can be co-located. That's what they like to do. AT&T likes to do the construction or any of them. Verizon could do the construction first, and then they invite others to participate. So that's 3 additional. We just need to be aware of this. What does that mean? That could mean additional 3 times 9 additional antennas. 3 times 9 is 27 additional antennas on top of the current AT&T initial startup, which is 9 antennas, okay, which will be a lot of excessive rate. Again, we have to use the word radiation. They are emitting radiation and they're setting it up. Now they note in the same page that, oh, it's okay because there's nothing really around where they're proposing this tower other than this daycare called Country Kids Childcare, which is 0.38 miles northwest. 0.38 miles is not far enough from a tower that's going to have 4 times the number of antennas that are initially being planned, okay? So I just ask you to think about that. We need to think about who are the most vulnerable groups, and we'll be talking about vulnerable. The other thing that they point out in their tower, which is very important for us in this room to understand, is they're basing their justification on 1996 power density permissible exposure limits that the FCC established in 1996. Okay, don't you think life is different from 1996? 1996, okay, my second born was born. It was 5 years old. I was working at a technology company. And we just kind of were starting to do luggable laptops, not even real laptops yet, okay? We didn't have iPhones, iPads. We didn't have smartphones or smart technology. And I know a lot of you are really young here and you probably don't remember all this, but we didn't have any of this stuff. We had hardwired computers, very little mobile. And if you had a cell phone, I remember my car getting outfitted with an antenna that was on the roof. And then there was an installation done of my cell phone. It wasn't really what we call mobile today. It was analog, okay? So we just
The
have to
only
be
one here
clear.
not young enough to not remember is Mimi, cute little girl over here.
You
But
guys
the
are
rest
so
of us
young in there, okay?
Okay.
Okay. So this is again out of their application. I'm just level setting what I've seen in the application. If I've seen something wrong, or if I don't have it right, or if you, whatever, please let me know. This is a busy chart, so bear with me as I walk you through this. This is the initial list of antennas that AT&T is proposing in the first phase, okay? If I count these up, it's 9, okay? Because there's 2 of these at 1900, 1.9 gigahertz or 1900 megahertz. So here we have, these are the effective rate. This is the watts. This is the power that's allegedly coming out. I did ask CT Sighting to give me the actual equipment manufacturing and model numbers, and they have not provided that to me. And this morning, they basically asked me to just be, what do you call those? Anyway, to be asking questions on November 3rd. So I don't have their data. This is their data. When you add all this, it's 81,639 watts per that vendor. Multiply that by 3, because when Verizon wants to come on and T-Mobile wants to come on, or guess what, a new player, Dish, wants to come on, you're going to be seeing these kind of values. Why I circled this right here. See these down here, the 739, 763, I think that's the stuff for your emergency stuff, to be honest with you. 3.5 gigahertz, 3.5 gigahertz. This is the C-band stuff that, if you remember, early part of this winter, January, February, the airlines were all getting upset because these vendors bought these bands from the FCC, okay? And now the industry has found that their 5G plans are really bogus, and that they settled for these lower bands. They're called mid bands, 3.5 gigahertz, 3.8 gigahertz. Okay, these antennas. But the planes didn't want to be within 3 to 5 miles because it interrupts with their instruments. So when a plane has to be on auto, all right, let's say the pilot is having a problem and he puts the plane, they found that at this level, 3.5 gigahertz, it would interfere with the instruments and cause a potential risk of a plane coming down, all right? So my point, and everybody's point who understands this, is if a plane needs 3.5 miles as clear, this is their industry speak, I didn't make this up, all right? What about us humans? What about that daycare center that's 0.38? All right, so just keep that in mind. All right, these are 5G, all right? So when someone tells you we're not putting in 5G, that's called misuse of terms, misrepresentation of what they're doing. All right, for telecommunications, to make a phone call,
Nobody.
do an emergency. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Nobody said it at the meeting. They would upgrade it. They didn't deny
said
it.
right
They
now.
just- Yeah, they said they would upgrade it.
Yeah, so they didn't say they will not.
No, I've never heard.
No, I asked.
It's not,
at the first
they're not
meeting.
putting that. All I've
When they
ever
first
heard is
came in.
not right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Coming.
yeah, it's coming.
Put it up in the middle of the night, like they did behind us, Tara, I think.
Here we go.
So let me just
I don't
share
know.
this page. Do you see this page on here? This table on the right, where it says FCC limits? Okay.
Yeah.
This is what the FCC has deemed as safety. This is their limits for maximum possible exposure to their radiation. This top piece is for workers. So the guys and gals that go up these poles, which I give a lot of admiration for their bravery, they should not be on a pole with an active antenna no more than 6 minutes. Okay? And then the FCC has this cute table. I remember seeing this like 2 years ago, and I almost wanted to throw up. Limits for general population, that's you and me walking in our street, living in our homes, going to the daycare center, going to church, whatnot, whatever, right? The average time that we should be exposed to these levels would be 30 minutes. I don't know about you, but do you live like 30 minutes in your home or school? Or right there in the town
There's-
center where there might be. a town-
Tower right outside of the
Exactly.
town hall.
I
So
know
look,
there is, I know there is. Okay,
This is, yeah, I commend you so much, Pashka. This is a lot of really amazing research, and you've definitely done your due diligence. You understand this, but how do you get everyone else to understand it?
well, I'm praying a lot that minds and hearts would be open, because I see lots of people being injured. I'll tell you very briefly, I have an 81-year-old lady that is stuck in her house, okay? Talk about emergency. She cannot use a phone, like cellular. She can be on her landline, very limited because she gets very weak. And the Eversource put in a smart meter in her house when she hasn't had one all these years. She's chemically sensitive due to some injury in her young working life, right? She cannot leave her home and she cannot live in her home, right? And this is what we're dealing with. There's a lot of elderly with issues and a lot of our children with these issues. So I just pray that we can do some more education, Tara, that we can reach more people in our towns with the real truth, rather than just the marketing hubbub that we see on TV that makes all of this so sexy and fast and amazing, right? But we're seeing a major shift in health, and they know this. The industry knows this. So for the sake of time, I just want to show this beautiful chart I got from the proposal. Again, I did not make this chart. I stole this chart. Okay, I'm reusing it here to show you. What they're planning here is to put this on Vail, 60 Vail. All right. And what they're saying in this application is this antenna for AT&T is going to be able to communicate with an antenna at CT 1274 or something like that. Basically, there are all these antennas out there that this little one is going to communicate with across these miles, 4 miles, 3 miles, 2 miles. This table comes from them, okay? This is the distance, 4, 1.5, 2.6. This means that everybody in this circle, all the way up here, is going to get an emission, okay? And it's going to be targeted. The thing about those 3.5 gigahertz antennas, they're beam forming. Beam, B-E-A-M forming. They're not like in this pretty arch that spreads out like that. They're very beam forming. So yes, these will be highly concentrated beam forms that will be going on the 3.9. All right. So what I'm saying here is these microwaves are varying degrees. Remember on this page, we saw that they're going to have varying frequencies from 739 all the way to 3.5. What we're saying here, this mixture of frequencies Does anyone play instruments in this room or part of a band? Just like music, you could tune something, right? All right, I'm not a musician. I'm sorry, my kids are, but not me. But frequency is frequency is frequency. Music is a frequency. These are frequencies, and they will have bioeffects increasing synergistically across these different frequency, increasing the complexity of them simultaneously. With what started out as 769 can actually be accelerated to 2.4 easily because of the way they heterodyne. You can look this up, heterodyning and harmonizing. All right, so the mere fact that we are putting into this pollution mix all of these frequencies, coupled with, I will show you in the next page, the other towers, we are creating a heterodyne and harmonizing disaster, and it's invisible to us, okay? Other than those people that are starting to develop major illnesses. This again is the map of all the towers that AT&T decided to show on their application. I think the number goes over 35, 36, 35, I think. There's a lot of towers in this. These are all towers, okay? And then what I want to do now is, that's kind of just what I saw in the application. All right. What I want to do now is talk to you about what we did to try to determine if there's a gap. And trust me, if there's a gap, substantial gap, because the FCC is very clear on establishing substantial gap versus just a gap. All right. If there's like a whole town that can't get service, that's a substantial gap. If there's a whole community that can't get service, that's a substantial gap. But if it's here and there, there's nowhere in the Telecommunication Act anywhere that says every square inch of our air and space and land need to have coverage, okay? So what we wanted to do is take a look at the Brookfield area to understand if there was a gap. And so what I did is I used a tool that I bought, okay, as part of Connecticut Responsible for Technology. And this is a professional tool. This is not like a mommy blogger tool, okay? It's not a fake tool, it's a real tool. Professionals use it, as a matter of fact. It's to detect indoor signals and outdoor. So I can actually detect whether or not I can get cell service within my house or outside my house or in the community. And it maps out the frequency. I'm going to play this very short video of this. Is an exact video, exact reading I did. And Joan was there and Gwen was there as my witness, as well as someone from my group, Rick. Going to do another site. This is where they're proposing in this vicinity, because we can't get close to the actual construction site. So we're going to take a reading and see what channels, what antennas, what carriers are available from this commercial site. And the address is in the vicinity of 60 Vale. And it's across the street from Connecticut Laminates and Millwork. Oh, okay, so we're going to start a scan and we'll see what we can find. So in the background, we have an EMF reader, EMF RF reader, Safe and Sound Pro 2, and it's measuring in microwatts square meter, the amount of radiation being emitted. So clearly we're getting radiated right here. Let's stand away. One of the reasons we don't hold on to these devices. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Takes about a minute and a half, 2 minutes to read. This is why I didn't want to do it in the rain the other day. Okay, there we got from this location. Okay, so what you just saw was my iPhone capturing the data from the device called the Wilson Pro. Okay, it's no bigger than an iPhone that syncs up, has an antenna, and goes out and looks for the different antennas that it can find in the region, in the area. Okay, it does then produce this map over here on the iPhone itself that is saved. And then I can actually transmit the data, all of the data, as far as the exact location, longitude, latitude, where I took the reading and where the antennas were, which is really kind of cool. All right. Again, it's a professional grade device. It's not like, you know, a toy. And do another site. This is okay. We'll end that. So what we did is, that's the instrument that I used. Okay. And I have my witnesses, you know, right there. what I then did do, what I did with the help of the team is I identified where on the map do you have currently, and I only picked 4 antennas, even though there are more, 4 towers, even though there's over 10 in Brookfield. But here is one up here on 39 Carmen Hill, one down here, tower at 100 Pocono Road, one at Huckleberry Hill Road, one at the tower called at 101 Park Ridge Road. And then here is where the proposed new one is. So I just wanted to figure out where things were, okay? And then using
made
Google, go ahead,
Who made this map?
me. Okay, I
Or
just went on
CT
Google Map and plugged in those addresses. And I got the addresses from CT Sighting's website where I could look and find all the, where the towers were physically located according to CT Sighting. Okay?
Thank you.
And then what I did using Google Map, Google Map has this thing where you can figure out distance. And so anyway, I plotted out how far. So this tower up here to 100 Pocono Road is 2.4 miles. And then I matched up 100 Pocono to the school was 1.5
Yep.
miles.
Yeah,
And
we
then I
can see all
matched
that.
up this one to this one, it was 1 mile. And then the tower at Huckleberry was less than a mile, which was 4,000 feet to the school site where I did a school test, by the way. So that's why I kind of made the school the center over here for a little bit. And then I did it miles from the school to the 101 Park Ridge Road was only 1.7 miles, 1.07 miles, I should say. And then from the Park Ridge Road to where they want to put the new tower at Vale, it was 2,000 feet, 2,030 feet specifically, okay? So I just wanted to get a lay of the land, all right? And one of the things that, Tara, I had heard was that the school needs this new tower over here to do Wi-Fi support or do some support over here for the new school. Is that true? Is that what, is your?
That actually, that was my initial understanding, and I was wrong.
Okay.
Pete, can you, what the school's gonna have? Because it's not gonna be associated with this tower, of course, to Paul. And
Okay.
Paul, just so you guys know, through the ARPA funding that came
Yeah.
down, we hired a consultant, what's the name of his firm again?
New England Radio Consultants.
So they are the consultants to, get our EMS system upgraded.
A couple weeks ago is when he spoke to the school board about that. The exact infrastructure that's in there, I don't know. It's based off getting communications with all 4 of the schools.
And we're not
So I don't know why
experts
that
in
tower
any of
would-
this technology, which is why we hired a consultant.
Right.
So,
I would love to talk to them when you approve it. I'd love to hear what they have to say because, yeah, I mean, that seems like a really crazy thought to say that this tower is needed for this school. When you can see right here, you've got 3 towers beaming at that school. Okay. But for the school, to be honest with you, we'll talk about that, but fiber optics is really the solution for a school. Okay.
has that ever been brought to the Board of Ed through the whole planning phase of building the new school years ago? I mean, where?
Oh, I will
to-
show
to-
you,
to-
I will show you a map. Connecticut Education Network is based on fiber, and I will show you, we have over 2,500 miles of fiber. So fiber is not a new concept. Fiber was actually the reason why, okay, us oldies, because you young people don't remember this, but in the 1990s, we were all paying in our cellular phone bills extra money to cover fiber to be installed to all of our homes and all of our school structures. So I could talk to your school board about fiber. The schools that put them outside of Connecticut directly into the schools and expand on Ethernet as the direct connection have superior connection, okay? Fiber is not new, okay, but it's the most safest. The industry has stolen that idea and went ahead with a wireless deployment. And we've lost a lot of money in the billions of dollars. because it's been hijacked, okay? So school, I will be more than happy to meet with anybody you want at the board to talk about fiber and give them examples of schools that have been implemented. And then I'll show you the network. So our intent here was to take a look and figure out, and we did some testing. I tested up here. Okay, Gwen had us test up here. I tested at the school. I tested down here where they were saying that there's this gap. We had 3 tests taken here, 4 tests actually. I did a test on the edge of Bethel and Brookfield, and I got excellent service, okay? I could have done a test up here, and I apologize if you want me to. I'd be more than happy to make a day trip and take a look at that up here. But to be honest with you, I did not see a gap. What I did see is this, okay? Again, I have no vested interest in any decision that Brookfield makes, other than when I drive through Brookfield, I don't want to be microwaved. That's my interest. It's not financial, it's nothing. So this is the data. Remember I showed you that screen from the meter that pushed out that data about what antennas it found? This is the data that comes back to me in a spreadsheet. I don't modify this data. It tells me where I took the reading, latitude and longitude, the date and the time, okay? I put in this description when I uploaded that reading on the phone, just so that I would remember that we did Vale Road, okay? But this is all the data. It found AT&T, found T-Mobile, and found Verizon at 60 Vale. This is a report card that we put together just to show, because nobody here really understands, you know, DBM and DB and RSRQ and RSSI. I mean, you know, you don't have to be an engineer, but you do need to know a little bit. So we tried to make it easy with the color coding as far as what's good service, what's fair, and what's poor. And if there is a gap, it should be blue, like minus 115 and minus 17 to 20 in these 2 categories at the same time to show a gap. So if there's a blue here and a blue here, then that would be a gap in service. But in this example, there is no gap in service at 60 Vale, okay? Because we don't have these numbers. We don't have 115 and less up here, okay? So each page, each place that we took a reading, we recorded this, and I updated the colors. So again, I did not change any numbers. I let the computer do that. And then, like, this is at the new school. There were 12 antennas accessible in the parking lot at the new school. And if you want to have a recording like I did on Vale, uploaded on my server, but to put it in the file makes these files super, super big. But 12 antennas were found in the parking lot on this date, 9/24 at 12:02 p.m. Okay, lots of AT&T, lots of T-Mobile, and lots of Verizon. All right, from a wireless cellular perspective. So we did each one. We took one on Park Lawn Drive at the edge of Bethel, one at 5 Teed Road, which was a small community of homes. We just did it on the street. You know, I didn't bother anybody. We just did it right on the street to see what was it. And that was a mixed area with lots of trees, and it was kind of hilly. And you have to know that wireless is going to be impacted by mountains and trees and valleys. That's just the way it is. It's just the way the beams either flow out, depending on the antenna and or the beam, all right? And that's why you're seeing a lot of trees being cut. And I really pray that Brookfield doesn't do a whole lot of tree cutting for this monstrosity. All right, and then, hold on, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry. Okay. All right, and then I did one in Parkwood and Vale. All right, and then I did one at 69 at the very top, Indian Trail, Brookfield. You have a lot of access to a lot of technology already. Back to this chart. So these are the test areas that we just showed. There were no gaps, all right? If there's no need, this is the most important thing our local governments and selectmen need to remember. The Telecommunication Act is based on needs, okay? It's not based on what the industry wants to do from a profitability standpoint. If there is no gap in service, then there's no need, and you could say, thank you very much, take your tower elsewhere. Now, I understand you have an emergency need to update your systems for the emergency first responder calls. And if you're on very old technology where you have to go to eBay to buy, Trust me, that's not where you want to be in this response time. But what I'm saying is you don't need 3.5 gigahertz to do that, number one. And you may not need an extra tower to do that, number two. What you may need to do is update the components that are probably sitting on each one of these towers, as well as different sites for emergency response. And I'm not going to be here solutioning that for you, but what I'm saying is millimeter technology is not going to help you to do your first responder calls, all right? And that's what they're trying to propose. The worst thing about these towers, once they're up, according to the Connecticut statute, unless we can get that changed next year, these manufacturers, these telecommunication companies, they could put whatever they want on any one of these. And Tara, you have no say. And that's the way they wrote it. All right. And that opens you, our towns and our people to really a dangerous situation if we have no say.
Well, that's kind of where I feel like we are today. I mean, after they were here in town hall a couple months ago, it was
You're
as
not
if
there,
the bullet train
Tara.
left the station and we can't put that train back. So,
Well, this is why
yeah.
we have to stop the train, because we are smarter now than we were 10 years ago when these other towers went in. All right. And we have to be much more judicious about what we're allowing. And we have to take back our power from legislators that are sitting in Bristol, making decisions for what's best for Brookfield, right? Look at this already. This came from their proposal, not mine. All right. 35 facilities covering parts of Brookfield, 10 towers. There's also antennas mounted on the CLMP power, on the CLMP buildings, apparently. 6 rooftops have small cell antennas, as well as there's 12 small cell installations. Do you know what small cell installations are?
Vaguely, yeah.
They're 5Gs.
Jonas.
Okay, most of them, okay? They're basically almost as powerful as those mega towers, depending on what's on them. But there's 12 of them. When I was driving by from the school to Vail, I saw 3 small cell antennas. They're cylinder size. One was right outside the Amazon parking lot. Okay, these are just extra emissions at very low levels, like 100 and maybe 110 feet or something like that, very close to people, all right, which is really too close. And they're radiating out. So again, you seem to have a lot of technology. There's probably things you could do to employ it for a town that's less than, what, 20.4 square feet? This I put in there on that page. Sorry. Oh, I'm really messing up.
Pasca, can you correct me if I'm wrong? I read that from 4G to 5G is not 10 times stronger, it's 1,000 times stronger.
It is, and because those cylinders can have multiple antennas and multiple frequencies, and once we start hitting 60 gigahertz, you just saw 3.5. They're gradually increasing, and trust me, if that tower has 3.5, and if we allow that 3.5, the next thing you know is they're going to put something else, maybe 10 gigahertz, maybe 50, 60. At 60 gigahertz, we're literally affecting oxygen. So, hey guys, you're going to have a lot of emergency calls where people are not going to be able to breathe. Oxygen displacement, okay, it attenuates to the oxygen molecule. I'm not making this stuff up. If you want background in history, science, I could give it to you all, okay? I threw this map in here too. There's a site, you could pencil this in your notes. If you go to antennasearch.com, it's pretty reliable. It's been around a long time, all right? And you could plot out, you plop in an address. So personally, me, when I'm going to go buy my next house, before I buy that house, I'll be plotting in these addresses with my realtor and saying, before I buy that house, I want to know how many antennas are near me because I don't want to be near me. Okay, 29 towers is what Antenna Search showed, and 142 antennas within 3 miles of 60 Vail. Don't tell me there's a gap. Don't. You cannot sell me a gap.
Well,
Okay.
as far as 5G, I can speak personally. I have AT&T as my provider, and this is not, I'm not inconvenienced by this at all, but I do not have coverage on certain parts of Super 7 and when I'm at ShopRite, for example, or even all the way over to CVS. So I can speak to that. There is very limited coverage in that area.
Because
So
you're on 5G.
I don't know if I'm on 5G
You're
or
on
not.
5G.
I'm on
and
AT&T.
They
as my provider.
haven't put up 5G cell towers. They're supposed to drop 4G.
You have to look at your
Change your
settings, Tara. Tara, is that Tara who's speaking about coverage?
Her phone is there.
I'm just saying from my
Yeah.
own personal experience, there's been times when I've been on the phone with John and we lose one another
So
in that
just
stretch.
switch to 4G, step down.
Yep.
Rather than have 5G and trying to find 5G towers, because there aren't that many yet. They're trying to multiply them by the thousands. Until then, that's not going to work consistently.
I don't equate that with a gap in coverage. When I think of a gap, and think about these guys being able to respond to somebody who has
What
a
you're
heart attack
showing
in
is
the
that there
cold
is no
parking lot.
gap in coverage.
I'm talking about emergency communication system. Right now, we do have a gap in
Okay.
that regard. That's
Right,
not-
and that is separate, and that is
cell
a
phone
separate
thing, I
tower
don't
that
know
should go on this town where you have full control. Not by having
so
AT&T
they're not
put
cellular.
something on some, right, it's not cellular.
So it's like, if you think back to like 9/11, I remember clearly, nobody had reception that day. The only one that had reception was anybody that had Nextel, which all new NYPD had Nextel. Nobody like me who had a Nextel at the time, I could only speak on the police, which is what the nickname they had for it. You could speak to your partner, so I was able to keep in contact with my husband and nobody else at the time. And all police officers, my husband was heavily affiliated with police officers, all his friends, and he was in the academy and everything, so he had affiliation with them. They were all able to communicate. Why wouldn't we go back to something like that, where it's easier for, 911 personnel to
That's
get in
what we're
contact
trying
with
to do.
people? Yeah, that's why we're saying, like, with the fiber optics, or like having like a campaign for us to have landlines in our houses. If you have a landline that's hardwired in, you have more access to speak to people. It's the same thing. You couldn't get through to on any phone which drops like that. But if it, like, even in a hurricane instance, it drops, you still have 911 access to a landline, which nobody has now. Now you have it hardwired, it's wired through your internet.
Oshka, do you have a lot more slides to get through here, or?
Just a few more. One of the things that I saw in the CT sighting where they're putting these questions out to the vendor, AT&T and Homeland Towers. This question, I'm not going to spend time on this top question. They're asking for the gaps, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. Apparently, AT&T is going to present whatever their gaps they have by November 3rd, or by the 27th, they have to have it submitted. But what concerns me, okay, that should concern everybody in this room, is they're more concerned about stealth versus health, okay? All right, they wanted to see whether or not AT&T and Homeland Towers could develop a design that was a stealth tower design that could work, because they'd rather hide it from the community than be honest about it, all right? That's very disconcerting, to be honest with you. All right, so this other site that you can bookmark, broadbandnow.com, is a Connecticut, they do actually reviews across the country, and Connecticut is a very well-connected state. Again, I saw some misinformation in their application citing that Connecticut was, poorly connected. We're 99%. I told this at a congressional, at a hearing at the legislators last year. I presented the same data that we are well connected. But guess what? They'd rather spend $500,000 putting a tower to radiate a town versus citing the truth. So I have a problem with that. Fairfield County, which is by Brookfield is part of it. That was 99.15 connected. That's pretty connected. Are you going to have pockets of non-connection? Well, yes, because guess what? You cannot control what building substances are built with, wherever that area is. You cannot control the mountains and the valleys, and that's going to have a say. And no matter how many towers or how many antennas you're going to have radiating microwave radiation, you may not fix those problems, because that's just the topography of that area. In Brookfield, you have all these providers that are more than happy to put in fiber, for your home or for your business or for your location or for your store.
Go back to the previous screen and just repeat that, because someone was out of the room.
I don't know why that's moving. It's floating. I apologize for that. But these are different service providers that service Brookfield. Okay, Frontier. Frontier is laying fiber, as well as cable companies are putting in. And I've done it myself. When I hardwired my home, and I'm on a cable service, all right, through hardwiring my laptop, my iPad, and even my iPhone through adapters, I have so much better performance than any wireless service can provide. So fiber is really a solution that you can have. Yes, we have satellites. You could use the satellites for communication and for connectivity, improve your speeds, okay? But wherever you put wireless, you've just degraded everything because that's the weak link.
I'm sorry, Bob, can you go back one more thing, what the percentage is in Connecticut versus Brookfield and Fairfield County?
Well, in Connecticut, the connected, this is I got this from broadband, and they're looking at the different counties. Okay, so you're in Fairfield County, and you're connected. 99.15 has 100 megabits per second coverage. That's like the download speeds. All right, so we really are in Connecticut pretty well connected. Doesn't mean every inch of Connecticut is, no, and I hope not. I'd like to go camping somewhere we're not going to be radiated. So Connecticut, Fairfield County is not bad. Look at that, 99.15. Hartford has a lot. You know why? They put a lot of small cells. New Haven, oh my God, I'd hate to live in New Haven, to be honest with you. Nothing about that, but they've got a lot of small cell antennas and towers. Okay. I'm not going to spend time on this because basically the telecom cellular business does not need 3.5 gigahertz, does not need all this power in order to make a phone call, does not need all this power in order to provide emergency services, okay, that our police and firemen need. Okay, that's just the way it is. We've been able to provide service literally for as low as, look at this number. I don't even know how to say this number, 0.0018 microwatts square meter. Okay, those other antennas that they're proposing are very, very high, and it's not necessary. Okay, I want to spend a little bit of time on the law. Okay, what is the law saying? All right. The Telecommunication Act, that's the act that they predominantly quote to you, Tara, all right? And they tell you that you can't do this because it's not in the law or whatever. I will leave these pages for you, but basically the law is right there with us. The purpose of the Telecommunication Act of 1934 was for the purpose of promoting safety of life and property, all right? And then it got amended in 1996, again. The intent of the law was to promote life and property. They knew then in the 1950s, 1930s, 1970s, 1960s, they knew how harmful this could be if it was not specially monitored and placed in the right places. They knew then, okay? They started seeing the ravages of radar on the servicemen, all right, way back in the 1910s and 1920s, okay? They saw the ravages of electric power lines on people. So that continues. So we have a right. So please don't let anyone say to you that the law preempts us from saying no. That's not true, okay? It's not true at all. All right, and more recently, there's nothing in this whole Telecommunication Act that limits the authority of the state. And I'm going to show you how New York has actually taken this and made it possible for the people to say no. And in Connecticut, we do have our first Article 1, Section 7. The people shall be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and possessions from unreasonable search and seizure. This new technology is not about your cell phone. It's about data harvesting and collection and surveillance. Okay. There's other laws. Right now, we're still, believe it or not, okay, we're still in an emergency according to COVID, right? Nothing has changed in that sense, right? Even Connecticut has not lifted its COVID-19 emergency. Well, guess what? The telecommunication has a memo called the Declaratory Ruling on Moratoria. And during this emergency period, which could last another 2 years, according to the White House, and as of October 20th, when I did a search to pop this into this page, they have not declared it's over. So you can use the power of a moratorium just
8th
to.
of November,
on
we're
hold.
selling on that.
What?
Sorry. Go ahead. We're looking forward to the 8th of November.
I am looking forward to that day too, trust me. I totally hear with you. And the other thing that, I don't know, many of you knew this, but when Lamont put in Executive Order 7H, along with the essential infrastructure, this was not about building out, okay? He should never have built out some of the towers that they allowed to be built in Connecticut according to the federal law, as well as the ordinance around maintenance during a national emergency. And I looked this up, it's about maintenance. Building off a $500,000 tower is not maintenance. That is construction. And so we even have it here. It says maintenance, the order 7H, you can look it up. It's essential services and goods necessary to maintain. Okay. So if you want a loophole, there's another loophole. All right, so here are some other laws. This is very important, Tara. I don't know if Joan or Gwen talked to you about this important case. In 2021, August 13, 2021, okay, EHT, the Environment Health Trust, which is very concerned about wireless and studies that had been submitted to the FCC to reestablish their guidelines. So that 1996 guideline is bogus. All right, so the FCC was actually remanded by the court, the judges, and they were told you have to go back and do some homework because you did not support your 1996 standards with science, okay? So they were remanded and they have not appealed. You could look up the case, you could read it for yourself, all right? But what they were told were three things as part of that remand, all right? One, to provide reasoned explanation for their guidelines. Wouldn't that be nice to have a reason for and the justification? The other was to address the impact, this is very important, RF, radio frequency radiation on children and the health implications of the long-term exposure of radiation. See, the children and women were never part of the 1996 FCC. It was a 6'5" kind of guy, military kind of guy that was used to create a dummy head. And it's called Sam. And I'll tell you about that one day. But women and children were not. So this court of judges were smart and said, you got to figure out this children thing. All right. And then number three, you've got to figure out the impact of RF radiation on the environment. Again, that was not part of the 1996. So guess what, Tara? If I were in your shoes, I'd say I want a plan to have an emergency system upgrade for my police and my firemen and my first responders. Yes, that's important. Okay, let's take a look at that plan. But I also want to put a stay on anything moving forward until we hear about what's the impact to our children and what's the impact to our environment. Because you have beautiful woods along the water. Your water is going to be impacted. Your lakes are going to be impacted, as well as the trees. And this is where FCC has failed in their job. Okay, they have not. And this is what the court has asked. So this has been done on August, like I said, August 13 and 2021, very recent, just last year. And they have not come back to the court. They have a lot of work to do. Another position that
Is the 1996 law still in effect, or have they updated it?
no, they have not updated it.
It just said, they said that they looked at it and they said it's okay.
Yeah.
So there's a few amendments here and there to
They have to do
clarify
this.
on their behalf, but not to address specifically the issues you brought up.
They didn't do the work that they were told they have to do by the court. They didn't do it.
So they were supposed to produce research regarding the health risks and environmental risks, and they did not. So from 96 to 2021, they did nothing. So now they've been reprimanded and they have to produce the research now.
And we're still building out, and they haven't done anything. We shouldn't be building anything.
Well, that's why towns like Mayapack, they're all fighting against it, and they're actually.
What is
getting-
Don Lowe doing? Sherman, how are you guys addressing it there?
Well, at the last Board of Ed meeting, a Board of Selectmen meeting that we went to, I think it was May or June or April, I'm not sure about this, we had a 5G on the agenda, he decided we could not speak, he was going to discuss what he discussed with Verizon and how it wasn't even information, and he said he wanted a motion to say that 5G could no longer be discussed at any meeting. And the other selectmen said no, he did have a couple concerns, he's one of the younger children, and he did discuss, like a couple things, but he said, but there's no, he didn't agree with our experts that we gave information on because the FCC is so, trustworthy, and the CDC and all of their agencies.
Right.
So they're in that place. But he does have children, Joel is very close to the school, like right across the street, and that's where there might be some sort of a tower going, I'm not sure, we can't really figure it out, small cell. So he's the one to really maybe go to, Don is basically, he's not there to,
So did that motion pass that you
No,
can't talk about it
no, we
anymore?
didn't.
Don washed his hands.
But
He
Don
said
doesn't
he-
wanna
he
discuss
has
this.
nothing to do with it. It's a state issue and it's going to
That's what
private
he
land.
said.
That's what he said.
I mean, a lot
To
of,
be fair, that is kind of the position we're in.
but they're telling you that, and I think Pasca's kind of saying, Pasca, right, that that's not quite the case. Pasca, it's not really the case that the state is telling them that their hands are tied, they can't do anything, but you disagree with that with all of your research, right?
All I'm saying is if you take the law and you actually read the law like I did 2 years ago, when every legislator that I called said, oh, Posco, we can't do this because our hands are tied, they preempted us, and I looked that up and I looked it up and I spoke to lawyers. Okay, and we can get you to speak to a lawyer. Okay, and it's false misinformation. They, of course, see, there's a difference between how many cell phones could get access in 1996 and today, okay? All right, let me tell you something. 10 years ago, I threw out my AT&T phone because I couldn't get access anywhere. When I switched phones to a different provider, I got perfect service, okay? So it depends on the provider, it depends on what they're doing, but there is plenty of access. And we didn't know in 1996 publicly, other than some towns were really ahead of the curve and they prohibited. And the government was like, well, we have to allow blah, blah, blah. But there is no law that preempts you as a locality to say enough is enough, we have enough, okay? And we could fine tune things. I totally agree with the emergency. We can fine tune things, but to put in towers a mile apart, come on. We never put towers a mile.
Pasca, in the interest of time, do you think we could skip ahead to actions that could be taken?
Thank you.
I also like the slide that she has for, other countries. If you can, like, pause there for 10 seconds
I
when
just
you'll be
want-
scrolling.
Can I just share two more cases? It's really important. This was a recent case in June, the Supreme Court, okay? They basically came out with the West Virginia versus the EPA, and it puts the FCC in the same bucket. These agencies are not governing agencies, okay? Only Congress can make laws. These agencies, when someone says, oh, the agency prohibits us from doing this and that, you really have to understand that's not how our Constitution is built. There's no federal or state agency that has any lawmaking or enforcement authority in your community whatsoever. You can look at the guidelines and you could then work with their guidelines, but they're not in charge of us. A 9th Amendment, the 10th Amendment, and now even the Supreme Court validates this, okay? We forgot about our Constitution, and this other one, this is a very important case that substantiates why we in the towns have power, and that's the village of Flower Hill in New York, where this judge basically supported a town that did not want to put in 18 small cell antennas in the village, in their little area, okay? And this judge was smart enough to read the law, and he says, nothing in this chapter concerning the Telecommunications Act shall limit or affect the authority of a state, local government, or instrumentality. Okay, so these are real cases that support us in our mission to decide for ourselves in our towns. So
But what about it going on private property? how does that, like, aren't businesses essentially able to do whatever they're approved to do because it's on private property? That's the free enterprise and open market that we live in. How do you
Well,
stop it?
doesn't our zoning control private property as well as public property?
Correct.
So we need to work with the zoning board, to decide, you can
But I
definitely,
thought the
you can
state,
definitely
the
set
zoning says no, the state
distance
can
limits,
just say
right?
yes.
You could say, you can't have a small cell closer than a half a mile from a residential house or something, or whatever you can do it in zoning. The zoning board has to take charge,
The other thing is, are they
revise
willing,
the zoning.
is the
That
person
is
that's putting the
important.
power up,
That is
to the health
important.
hazard?
Yeah,
Are they live?
You guys know better than I do. They don't see it as a health issue. They see it as
That's fine, they don't see it as a health issue, but they are liable if someone goes and
yes.
to them.
Let's
I
talk
mean,
about liability for a second. And absolutely, what everyone is saying about the zoning board, that's where the zoning can really play a role in deciding and protecting the interest of the town, okay? Because when I read one of your zoning pages, it said a tower can be placed a mile from another tower. I don't have to be an engineer to know that's not acceptable, okay? That could be revised and you could get some help. But talk about liability. Who has liability? Who has liability today? AT&T does not because they're uninsurable, okay? Believe it or not, they're not insurable because guess what? Lloyd's of London that does the underwriting knows for a fact that the bio effects are serious and are real. Tumors, heart tumors, brain tumors, cancer, leukemia in our children, they're all part of the EMF radiation emissions. So who should carry the insurance for the health effects for Brookfield should be decided upon upfront. Should it be AT&T and Homeland Towers? Should it be the people that own 70 Vale that are going to benefit from the rentals money that they're going to get? They're not doing that as a nonprofit. They're not doing that as the goodness of their heart to radiate everybody. They're getting income. Or should it be the town of Brookfield? I think this topic should be discussed at a town level to say who owns this liability, right? As well as the insurance for the environment. If you really look around, you can actually see where towers are based on the looks of the trees. It's not hard. Right now it is because it's fall. But the solutions that I think we came up with, I just wanted to say here, one more thing, there is a better solution. It's fiber. Please, let's take a look at how you could implement fiber in your town to provide the speed and security and access, okay, without the residual negative effects of radiation. All right. And I have to tell you, there is no way that fiber will be outperformed by wireless. The speeds are incredible. Okay, you can get 1 gigahertz of video computer speeds, but you're not going to get that on wireless. You talked about the schools. This chart I thought would be interesting to you. This is the fiber network that is implemented in Connecticut, all right? The schools have been wired with fiber, okay? And they've started doing that in the late 1990s, early 2000, okay? So we can bring, or you can exploit fiber at that school or any of your schools, all right? I know with time it's 1:13. I really appreciate all the time you've given us. I think the solutions are one that you just spoke about. Let's take a look at the zoning. You could bring in a lawyer. His name is Andrew Campanelli. He's out of Long Island. He's done lots of work across the country to help towns establish responsible zoning rules as it relates to towers and small cell antennas. You can establish a moratorium. You have a right, okay, to take care of the safety of the people of Brookfield. You can do that. I could send you and email you the moratorium that we've used. We should demand from our legislators a commission on health and safety. Our policemen should not be endangered if they're surrounded by so much wireless. Their health and their family's health should not be compromised because of all of this wireless that they're being subjected to, as well as other equipment around the town. Accelerate fiber, Tara. Let's have a fiber commission. Where can we take advantage of fiber? You've got Frontier and so many other companies that can bring in fiber to the people's homes at a reasonable rate, as well as landlines for communication. And really, let's look at your school, a wireless A smart school really puzzled me last year, but I don't live in Brookfield. I don't have a say in Brookfield, but we are harming our children. I'll tell you this one short story, and I'm going to validate it with data sometime this week when it's not raining, is at Staples in Westport. I know of a group of children, young teenagers, who can't attend that school because as they walk into that school, which is very Wi-Fi, and Westport has a lot of 5G, that I've measured myself, they get sick. They get nauseous and headaches and get really sick. And they are now homeschooling because they cannot attend the physical school of their own school because their school is poison, okay? It's emitting so much radiation that they get sick, and it's not psychological, it's physical, okay? So those are, I think, some of the solutions. We can talk about others. I had plenty of charts on the health effects, environmental effects. And I think your town has done a great job listening to those from Joan and others. Even our pollinators are all affected by this, and we have to balance that. Our food comes from pollinators. Without them, we don't get food. So I will be quiet. I wanted to address these points that we showed statistically that there is really no substantial gap. And I know you've cited some with AT&T at different parking lots, but we could go take a reading there if you want.
Yeah,
But
no, look,
this is our story.
I'm not here to try to debate, or I tend to agree with 100% of what you're saying, okay? And my hat's off to you. Again, you're quite remarkable, and I really, my compliments for everything that you do. This one is a leadership challenge, I should say. How do I navigate through this as it pertains to the town? Because my duty and my obligation is to do what is right by every resident in this town. How do I do that? Okay. That's where the challenge comes in. I know we have the siting council on the 3rd. I am to prepare opening remarks for that meeting. I already know what I intend to do. But what next? I've never been through this before.
Mm-hmm.
How do we as a town, what's next? All these recommendations or whatever you're calling them, to be honest, I feel like we're chasing our tails, and it's this cycle of, oh, too late. Like, how do we go back now? For me to stand up and say, oh, let's full force, everybody switch to fiber. In a perfect world, that would be amazing.
Well, the
But we're
first
not in a
step, I
perfect
think,
world.
is what happened in Easton, which is to declare a moratorium.
Do that.
That gives you time.
And does that go through zoning? Does that,
How does that work?
Yeah.
So it can go through a lawyer, actually a group of people
The selectmen can just.
in,
but-
Mayopac, is that the way you say it? They
Mayopac.
hired a lawyer, and they established a moratorium, but it cost a lot of money, but a group of people got together and did that.
and the other
So
thing
if
is
that's
we
what's
don't,
required.
I mean, you ladies are tremendous as well, but this is all we've got. Like, where is everybody?
If you could put out a statement as selectmen to say, we have a concern here, we want you to know about it, have a forum, and have Pasca speak at a forum, or if she would, or, just educate the people, say, this is really important, we need you to know, it's affecting the children, it's affecting the schools.
It's hard for me to do that in my own defense, only
Yeah.
because I am to remain very neutral, which is where Don's position is, right? Like, there's pockets of people who want this.
Yeah.
So
They
how
don't
do I
know, but
say,
they don't know.
So
They don't know the
that's
health.
fair, but
Like
it's
the
not,
vaccine.
it's not really
Right.
Tara Carr's job to create
No.
this forum. Like, you guys should be doing that.
Well, then we can and
And
try
take
to
it to
stop
the
it.
Board of Ed. You have to stand in front of every
Yeah.
single audience. I cannot do that.
I didn't know you couldn't, but.
I mean, as a
Yeah.
resident and a concerned
Yeah.
constituent and a parent myself, sure. But
Well, these are
when I'm trying to represent everybody,
But the problem is they don't have to defend themselves. We have to defend ourselves. Whereas they should have to defend why they're putting it up and that it doesn't cause any harm.
Right.
And they can't do that.
so what happens at the siting council, for those of you who've been through this before? I mean, can Pasca present this and say these are our concerns here?
It's
for
been
you?
minutes,
3
probably.
minutes or
Been minutes.
something.
The
3
site
minutes.
council are not elected representatives, right? They're just government employees. What if are you able to like decide to hire some time from this lawyer, Andrew Caponelli? Maybe he could give you some.
Appropriations for funding on that would have to be approved, and again, it's hard, the Board of Finance would be the end-all, be-all on that, and it's hard to say if they would support it because it's not representative of the entire
Tara,
town.
Tara, what did you do? What did the town do when they discovered the coronavirus? And they appropriated so much money for masks because it was supposed to be viewed as a safety thing?
Fortunately, I wasn't here then because the way Brookfield approached Corona would have been very, very different if I was here at that time.
See, the problem is this
And that
is a
made all the
safety.
labs either.
This is a safety thing. So the more we know, the more we have to take responsibility. What we didn't know 2 years ago, we now know now, right? What you didn't know when you first entered office, you now know now. So it's not about backtracking. It's about being responsible to say, listen, it's come to light that we have a problem. We are now considered, guess what? In this chart, okay, where is it? Where did I put it? Okay, right here. Right now, this is considered the 4th largest source of pollution. Did you know that before you entered this room? No. I could guarantee you, nobody. Police officers, did you know that microwave radiation is the 4th largest source of pollution? So you putting together a small commission to take a look at what is the best thing for Brookfield is a smart decision, okay? Because now you know a fact that you didn't know. As the 4th largest source of pollution after air, water, and noise, microwave radiation induces, this is material fact, this is not opinion by Pasco or anybody in the room. It induces many biological effects. Did you know that scientists are able to turn on diabetes? I don't know what the town spends on diabetes, but did you know that diabetes can be turned, type 2, not type 1, but type 2, can be turned on simply by wireless radiation at 2.4 gigahertz, which is the size of a regular standard modem, okay? Diabetes is the leading cause of many, many illnesses in Connecticut and in our children. So I think a smart thing would be to have some sort of working group to look at, okay, how can we change the trajectory of this 4th largest source of pollution to come up with a good plan, a safety plan for people. Now, guess what? You could do non-smoking campaigns and all these people that want to smoke. You cannot control the health and wellness of everybody or the environment, but the majority of the people, once they're aware that their children's brain, okay, is this 5-year-old brain near a cell phone, a 10-year-old, and here's an adult, okay? It's just now we have awareness.
That the public health should be here and should have heard all of this.
Mhm. Yes,
Exactly.
I wasn't sure of what was
Mhm.
happening today, so
It should be
Yeah.
recorded.
So I.
were you gonna say something?
All of us here know other reasons for what 5G is for. There are other reasons. We have to trust that. Obviously, with no studies, it doesn't seem right. Why are they doing this? There are reasons behind it. It's so much worse than what we've told you so far. And we just have to have trust in the fact that this is not, it's not safe. And we have to know until they prove us studies, we have to keep our people safe. And there's just so much more we could say. And people like you are not ready for that process.
There are plenty of studies on health
Mhm.
already. It's just the FCC hasn't done their own studies. I mean, we can produce
Yeah,
thousands
look,
of
I
studies saying
understand
this is a
where
problem.
you all are coming from. I'm not.
This
I'm
is a
rational
world, this
enough
is
to
a world
Gentlemen,
push, okay?
understand how
Of course.
much of a
Thank you.
health risk 5G is?
I don't have any reason to doubt anything that you're saying.
Oh, good.
Just,
Let me give you another connection.
I'm
You
not
might
in
wanna
here
look
for
at.
that purpose.
No, we're
Are they ready for that?
completely
They ready
in
for that?
agreement that what you need is very important.
I invited them today to speak, you know, to the communication system upgrade that we're
You might wanna look at that
addressing currently. And I just, you know, needed some help in explaining
Well,
that it is very, very
The
separate from
recommendation would
5G.
be to have a tower for them only on town property that can't be,
Town already voted that down. That's why we're looking to get on
so
the
the
tower.
town,
Wouldn't there be consultants that could come into your department
We hired a consultant.
We hired, that's how.
Well, did they
no,
say the tower was for your
So
emergency
they recommended
service?
that we get on that
Not
tower.
right.
Okay, so
If this
where's their funding
60
from?
Vale
Who
Road
are they
tower
from?
were
Yeah,
to
where
fail,
were they
Who?
from?
Who's funding that company? Like, where do they
What kind?
stand in this? The company that was
The
hired, like,
consultant.
The
what is
consultant,
their background?
we,
the town of Brookfield, voted to allocate $30,000 of the ARPA money, which is taxpayer money, for COVID relief to the consultant to help us develop out our new communications upgrade.
So, Pascal, I don't know if you have any thought on,
So
like,
maybe
which
you have to
company
address-
is, and what the connections are with agencies and stuff, so.
This gentleman is out of New Hampshire. His LLC is a company that's helped, they just revamped Newtown, for example, and it's a way to bring all of our, emergency services
Okay.
up to standard so that,
Yes.
God forbid, we ever have a major
he didn't make a
catastrophe
proposal
here.
that this tower go up.
No.
He's just telling us, get our equipment on the tower.
On
Okay,
a
so
tower?
if the tower does
A
not go
tower.
up, where should
Yeah.
the equipment go would be the question.
On a tower,
A tower,
in that
okay.
vicinity.
There's
Okay.
one
Two
2,000
miles
feet
away.
away. There's one 2,000 feet
That
away.
tower, you can't, this
We
one
hired a
here,
consultant because we don't have that expertise. I can't say that because that tower is 2,000 feet away, that will make the coverage. Our guys are going into buildings, they can't talk on the radio, and we can't hear them. That's a problem.
Mm.
We hired him, and he said, this tower going in with our equipment will help our dead zones, which is down south of Costco, all down in that area to get portable radio coverage for our officers, firemen, EMTs. I can't say that the tower down the road will accomplish that. That's not my expertise.
Well, that's a question for
well,
you.
I
to
did
them.
speak with the consultant about this tower that's, a mile and a half away. It's not on Park Ridge Road. I think it's on Terra Drive, strangely, behind Ashley Furniture there. That is a high voltage tower, and there's no way we can hang town equipment on that. You have to have special permissions to get onto the tower. It's very, very dangerous. You have to pay to have access to the tower. It would never work for us to put the equipment we need for these guys on that tower. So that's where this tower is a no-go for our system upgrade.
What is Pasca's solution? I don't know. Pasca, do you have a solution?
It would
I
be
have-
to put a tower
I
on
would like to
essentially
look at
back.
that report. Maybe I can meet with you guys and talk about it and bring in other people that I know in other parts of the country that are solving this. I mean, we could definitely share some brain power here. You know,
Because
so.
is it a solution to put up a tower that's gonna radiate everybody and create more health issues, including emergency issues
Save
for
one person.
people?
So one of the-
That's not
yeah.
a great solution.
One of the things that I've been thinking about through the last hour and a half is, how do we get all of this information to the greater good, right? And look, you've probably been reading the paper about our Candlewood Lake issue with sewer capacity, well, not sewer capacity, but failing septics, and we need potentially sewer, but they can't accommodate our flow in Danbury. So it's like this big, huge disaster of a situation. The infrastructure is antiquated. We just, there's a lot happening on the Federal Road corridor. We're in a much very different place today than we were even 2 years ago. That community, those communities have been able to rally. They had over 200 people at their forum with the WPCA a couple of weeks ago. So I like the idea of a forum. Again, I will be there, and I'm happy to represent my stance on the entire issue, which I will do on the 3rd of November at the Siting Council. But I'm not the one who's going to be at the front saying, okay, I'm picketing today, follow me. That's not where I am, unfortunately.
Well, there is a forum actually happening on Zoom on Tuesday with New York. And it's got 6 very, very knowledgeable speakers. I'd love to get that on maybe some sort of community page or anything they can participate. They can listen in. We've got scientists and a lawyer. Andrew Campanelli is very known in the telecommunication space. That would be a great thing if we can put that out there to the Brookfield residents that they should sign up and listen in. Okay, or we can then, after that one, we can coordinate a forum just for the Brookfield, maybe surrounded with Bethel and Danbury and Easton, and bring in some speakers into a conference room or a Zoom and host some education. What I did a couple of years ago in Easton is I ran a library event and I showed a documentary called Generation Zapped. And people came in to view it. And then we had discussion after, and it was really well received for those people to do it at the library to have. And maybe one of the members here can host a library event and show a couple of different documentaries for people just to increase their awareness. What's really frightening about all this technology is this technology is not about cell phones where all the commercials are all about. It's about things like I have here on this page. It's about an entry point through wireless for foreign countries to have access to our infrastructure. That's not conspiracy. That's actually been designed by the International Telecommunication Union that's run by the UN. We have weather modification going on that people need to know about. These sprays in our sky are chemicals that have patents that actually will control the atmosphere and the weather through wireless. So all these wireless that we're putting out there will be used by weather modification. These are other areas that this stuff is bleeding into by design without the sight of individual people. Most people don't know this, but the people in this room, they know this. Okay, so we could use a library event if someone would like to host maybe a monthly session, or every 2 weeks run a different documentary, and then we can have questions and answers. But this is a very serious situation. I think this is more serious than COVID, to be very honest with you, no matter where you feel about that thing. All right, this is about the health and wellness and the security of our cities and towns and people, and that rests with the power in this room.
I have a question. I was at the town meeting when the young women, the young mothers were speaking about security for the schools, and there was only about 6 or 7 of them, but they spoke very passionately and made their point, and I'm wondering if they're getting any response from the town in favor of what they're asking for, even though they were a small group.
For school security?
They wanted armed.
Oh, that
security.
went to vote in a town meeting 2 months ago now, and the armed guards failed by 15 votes.
They didn't get it?
We have school resource officers who are professional police officers in every school, and they are armed, but idea of having an armed guard, not a police officer, failed. So we have what we're calling security monitors in every school.
But they do have police officers.
Yes,
Yes.
we do.
Okay.
Mhm.
No, this meeting.
And we do have an armed guard for after hours.
Meeting on November, is that go forward from then on, or can we stop it after that?
I don't know what happens. That's why I'm asking whoever's been through this before. I mean, again, this is my first rodeo in this regard, so I too am learning on the fly. And
We can sign up to speak. You have to sign up before on the 2nd, but you only have 3 minutes.
I don't know. I feel like this is to be completely honest, this is a nightmare, right? Like, I'm calling it a leadership challenge because I've been through many leadership challenges that have been nightmares. This is one of them. And I don't know if the timing of this tower just happens to coincide with the fact that we need to upgrade our system.
Yeah.
It's just, I feel like if this tower wasn't coming, we'd be able to address this in a totally different fashion. And now
Now,
it's
that's where the
become-
consultant has to come in and come up with a plan B, just in case.
Yeah, we talked about that. I spoke with him in detail.
We're
last
really
week.
not talking just
Put
about
the
the
tower on hold. I mean, you don't have to cancel it. You could just say, listen, we want to hold and let's solution
I've
the
been
police
talking to the
problem
board
first.
since 2019, and I have records of what I said, and records are in the permanent record, and videos also of all the meetings I went to and how much information I presented to the board since 2019. So this is nothing new, and basically it had nothing to do with the specific tower. It has to do with the entire infrastructure, which is even going to be worse than that tower because it's going to be, those small cells will be densely placed and they will be very close to homes on their front yard, on those big telephone poles that were installed in Brookfield and all over the state, I'm sure. And that's
Yeah.
what really this is all about.
Look, I like the idea of bringing our own tower on Public Works site just for our communication system.
What was the price
But
on
that's
that?
not gonna stop the 60 Vale Road Tower. So,
Well,
This is two separate.
That's what we need to face also, because, and that's where I hope zoning can come in. And this has been done in other towns, not a lot, I don't know, but, and there's an organization called, Americans for Responsible Technology that keeps track of what's going on in different states. There's a new, I don't know what's happening in New Hampshire, I guess we should find out, because they actually did hire, a board of experts, to look into the health effects, and they ended up with, I think it took them a while to come up with the report, but they came up with the report that the health effects are very dangerous, and I think 7 or 8 of the people that were on that committee agreed that it should be stopped, and only one disagreed. That was the person who was with the industry. They had one industry person there, and that just happened very recently, so I don't know what the actual outcome of, in terms of action taken is going to happen in New Hampshire from that study. But we don't need to do a study. They did a study.
Does
We can
anybody
look at
live
their
near
study.
Vale Road here, Jennifer? No.
No, I asked the mother who does, and I didn't hear from
I
her.
remember one resident from that area came to one of the Board of Selectmen meetings not too long ago, I thought, the last time you all spoke
There are
about it, but-
people that, something was posted on the business section of Facebook, and there are people that said, we don't want that in our backyard. So,
Where are they?
I would rally, I mean, I'm not telling anybody what
I
to do, but
know,
they need to
Jenny.
show up.
Pasca, do you have any recommendations for that moratorium, what Easton had done? Because I thought you just go to the selectmen. I didn't know lawyers had to get involved or anything like that. How complex is
Look at
that?
this one.
Well, each town is different on how they proceed and make decisions. They put it to the 3 selectmen to vote. We did have people wanting to put a moratorium. I mean, I have to tell you honestly, I think in Easton, a lot of people were concerned about their property value because people know that, this is usually their biggest investment is their home. And they didn't want to lose up to 20% of their market value when they go to sell it. That was a very, very big selling feature for Easton, but also people got educated. I made sure they got flyers, they got educated, and realized that these are harmful effects. They're harmful effects, and it starts literally immediately. And depending on your issues, it'll be sooner than later if you have a chronic autoimmune disease and whatnot. So it was the 3 selectmen who voted, and we actually extended it till not this December, but the following December, on the premise that that FCC lawsuit where the Children's Health Defense and EHT showed that the court remanded them to come up with the reason and justification and to do the work on the children and environment. Come on, 1996 is not today. Those standards are ludicrous.
So the moratorium was simple. You had just a selectman vote.
It just went to
Simple, I
the
mean.
town selectmen vote at a town meeting, and this is, we voted. This is the FCC standard. Do you see this bar? This is crazy. Look, India is better than us. Okay, China is even better than us. All right. All right. Why are we this high? It was basically they looked at thermal, but that's not enough. The Russians even knew that it's beyond thermal. They used to run tests on dogs. They would stop the test. Guess what? 15 to 20 minutes. Because when they did the blood samples, they saw the injuries at a cellular level already. And they were like, I feel sorry for these dogs. Turn off the Wi-Fi. Okay. All right. We've been led to believe that this stuff is safe. It's not. Their standard, I laugh at their standard. It's ludicrous. So when you see, this beautiful chart from the AT&T phone where they show us this, we're in the standards. We're only 14.57% of what? 10 million? Of what? 10 million? That's ridiculous. It's unacceptable.
I'm gonna need a copy of the deck if you wouldn't
I
mind
will
sharing
send you a
that.
PDF. I will send you a PDF to this. You'll have whatever you want, and you feel free to contact me. I'll be more than happy. I would love to look at what the police report consultant is saying. I'd love to compare with what other places. There is a safe way to do this.
And I'd like to say that when we talk about the health effects, I would suggest that we don't start with cancer, because I've had personal experience with relatives who say, everything causes cancer. I think we could also start with some of the things that may not be as as shocking and dramatic, like insomnia, ADHD. I mean, these have all been proved through research. You know, there's science articles about all these different areas. In fact, they were even on Americans for Responsible Technology page. If it's still the same, this was a couple of years ago that I used to go there all the time. They had science and they had the health effects articles, the science articles divided into categories. Pregnant women, children.
Here's a simple chart you can use. This came from the military. Joan, look at this chart. This is from the military. It was declassified and put out for us to read, but it came out in 1972. Okay. I have several other military declassified reports indicating harmful effects. Let me just tell you, millimeter waves are not brand new. The military, and Tara, you could back me up because you have access to research that maybe I don't. All right, the military has been using millimeter waves a long, long time. As a matter of fact, the Russians were aiming military grade millimeter waves, those beams, at St. Petersburg, US Embassy, and literally making those employees sick. That was in the 1960s, early 70s, and then it was discovered. This is not new. It's just not broadcast. These are the areas of health effects that the military discovered, harmful effects, okay? We made this chart, my group designed this chart because women were left out of the equation. And guess what? Women carry babies. Last time I checked, that's the biology, and then affects our babies, all right? The male was a 6'2" military fit adult to come up with the health effects. That's ludicrous, all right? That's not what we have today. All right, the biggest thing that we're starting to see an increase in electromagnetic sensitivity, or I like to call it sickness. This is where you're literally getting sick because we have this infiltration of all of these various technologies, all surrounding us constantly. And remember, I talked about heterodyning. Look it up. Heterodyning is a thing. All of these are various levels of frequencies and pulses, and it's affecting people at the genetic, cancer, memory, neurotransmitters, neural activity, blood-brain barrier, and even doctors are recognizing this, and it's just involuntary exposure. And we have a responsibility to put as many of these as far away as we can and outfit them with technologies like fiber and landlines where it's necessary. But EHS, you're going to see it. It's called EMS or EHS, electromagnetic sensitivity or sickness, that's going to imprison people into health crisis.
What I've heard is, Pascal, if you can confirm, I mean, I've heard it affects everyone the same. Everyone is affected negatively. And the people who get sick are the lucky ones because they're the ones who change their lifestyle and try to remove and make their life. Is that right?
Well, unless they have to leave their job, leave their homes, and live in the middle of the woods in a little trailer, like I saw in one of the documentaries.
There's a woman in Sherman whose sister had to live in the desert in a tent, and she went to visit her there. And these people cannot live in society the way it is, and it's not right.
They're not really lucky.
No, right. So I guess the ones who aren't that bad, but you know, like a lot of people.
Autism is a direct relationship, a cofactor, autism, because it's neurological and neurotransmitter and neural activity and the blood-brain barrier. And that's really, you could literally attribute it to a mother's initial access to all of that EMF and then post-birth to the environment. We're seeing a lot of kids being misdiagnosed because what they have is this sensitivity, and it makes them ADHD, ADD, any of the alphabet illnesses out there. But doctors have proven it, like Dr. Klingert out in Seattle, I guess, he's proven it. When you take children out of the smart meter, get the smart meter off the house, get the tower, move away from a tower or an antenna, have the family not use cordless phones and Wi-Fi in the house, don't use a cell phone near their child, guess what? The child recovers. Isn't that awesome? It's just environmental, okay?
Yeah.
These things are affecting our children.
This has been really educational and informative. I want to say it's also been very troubling, which I'm already aware of a lot of this. So thank you for the reminder and the update. I'm a solutions-driven type person, and it it's hard in this situation because I don't know how to get to that solution. I don't even know, I mean, in my mind, I know what that solution
If
would
we
be, but
could
how do we
the
get there?
other- If we could get the other selectmen on board, would that help?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of questions to ask. I'm gonna do some work as far as the moratorium. That's interesting to me. I want to understand better, you know, how zoning comes into play here. But again, I also would just encourage everybody to keep the education going best you can. I don't have the bandwidth to be able to say, okay, we're going to potentially even creating some kind of subcommittee to some group
Task force.
on, yeah, I'm not opposed to any of that. It's just, I need help.
So some of this has been presented to the previous selectmen and Selectman Slater. And Slater was on board and understood the ramifications. She's the one that was actually pushing for more information.
Yeah. I can go back and try to find some minutes on that and talk to Ginny about previous meetings over the past few years. Ginny's getting ready to retire, so I need to have her get on that ASAP. Yeah, right now, the 10-meter target is the 3 November Siting Council, and again, I know where I stand, and I have no problem speaking my mind on that platform. But, you know, what's next is concerning to me.
I always think strength in numbers, like other selectmen, other towns doing the same thing at the same time. That's why I wanted Don to come here. Sometimes he'll like come to things too, I think, because he do that, and maybe it would expose him to something that, you know, concern him. But, you know, strength in surrounding towns, if there are any selectmen you know.
Yeah, I mean, I
mayors
even
that-
talked to Paul Zito, our consultant, about whether or not Danbury and Bethel know that this is in close proximity. And at one point, I thought they had said they looked for real estate across the Danbury line, not that it would put it very far away, but, so again, there's so many questions, like why this property? How do we even, approach this private property aspect? I don't have the answers. I don't know.
So who do you think will have the answers? That's it.
The zoning regs are about placement. I don't really know for sure, but I think the places that established new zoning regulations didn't say we can't have the equipment, but they said it had to be a certain distance away from schools and homes and playgrounds and stuff like that. And that kind of made it impossible for them to put the small cells in because they have to be very close to all those things. They have to be very close to each other. So I think, I guess we can go back to a moratorium and the zoning regs. If we can figure out how to do that, then that gives us time to establish and rework.
And Pasca, you have a moratorium already written up. It's just a document that it has to
Yeah.
be signed off on, correct?
I can email it to Tara and the rest of you. Yeah, it's just a document that you can customize it for yours. I mean, our last one basically says we want to, you know, keep the moratorium until we've determined that the FCC has complied with the remand and that we have clear guidelines, because again, you saw the guideline for the FCC, it's ludicrous. That's the only word I could think of, ludicrous. It's not a guideline. You might as well just say, put up anything you want, wherever you want, at whatever capacity you want. That's basically the answer. I could send you that.
That'd be great.
And I'd
All
like
right,
your,
well,
Sarah, keep the education going. See if we can get some library events. We can find some good documentaries. We could really educate people to save their kids. I do have a handout that I could send you. I would love to get that into our schools, how to reduce Wi-Fi, you know, in their personal lives. It's a quick little guide. I'll send that to you, or I'll pre-print the whole bunch, or we could get maybe the parent association to foster that in their homes and just increase the education. It's just two-sided. How to connect yourself direct as well as how to reduce Wi-Fi. My team developed that handout. I could share that with you.
yeah, I think if you keep the momentum going with the grassroots work and getting in front of as many of these boards and commissions as you can, that's where the rubber will really meet the road.
I have
Right.
one at home.
And you can put it on your
Maybe-
website, you can put it on Brookfield, be safe, be wired.
I have a lot of records of the past 3 years. I skipped time during the pandemic. But it's all on public record for the town, and I have some of my own records of all the information that was given to the other two selectmen over years. And I think there could be some issues of liability for them, that they ignored this. And the more illnesses and problems that develop in Brookfield because they ignored it may involve some liability to them. And I have all this, records to back
Yeah, if
up
somebody could
everything.
summarize basically the main points of this meeting, that would be helpful as well. And send it across to me. I know that you all have lives outside of these walls, and I appreciate, all that you guys do in order to
Thank you so
look
much.
out
Oh,
for
we're trying to
everybody.
protect ourselves and our families.
Right.
I get
It's,
that.
this is the biggest issue that we have.
This
There's
is,
no other issue. Once 5G cells come up, everybody will be ill.
we lose all control, they're taking control from us, it's gonna be mass surveillance, we lose all privacy, we lose everything. So much hinges on this, it's,
The COVID's not an issue compared to what is happening with 5G.
and by the way, 5G symptoms mimic
Yeah.
COVID.
Yes, I
So
think it's all
when we see,
connected.
oh, everyone has
I showed
COVID,
it at the last.
no
budget
virus,
meeting,
coming
right?
from a health perspective, I am a healthcare professional, no virus lasts for 2.5 years, and it's it always gets weaker, viruses. Things don't add up, and something to say.
So the side effects of 5G are basically the same side effects that you can see.
Yeah.
Right,
And
so
just put those two together now.
my little
In a
chart
year or
there,
two,
something to look at.
everybody's
little
going to be
crazy one.
extremely ill, and these poor men will be very, very busy. I'm sure you're very busy now, because I see how many calls you have within the last 2 years compared to 2 years before.
The movie that I put on that yellow sticky, that's incredible. Everyone in the country needs to see it, talking about the energy. The charts there, it's a lot of great information, 1 hour long. And, don't worry about the website with those side effects of EMF. That website will take you places that you may not be ready for, so you don't have to go there.
Thank you so much for listening to me.
Appreciate you all. Take
Everybody.
care.
Oh,
Thanks
just
for
an
having me.
FYI, I have
Thanks,
T-Mobile
Deb.
and I have no problem down in southern Brookfield. I can get anything anywhere.
Try putting it on 4G, look, just Google it on how to do that, because my son, he's not allowed to use 5G.
Thank you, guys.
No problem.
Thank
See you
you.
later.
Thank you, have a
Bye.
wonderful day.
Thank you,
And what-
Pasha.
What's that? 5G, go forward, 5G back.
Thank you,
4G, and then you have
Pasha.
reception.
You're on terrific. I would love you to do this for hours,
Yeah,
like
because
Dennis Sherman.
everybody has
I don't know if
AT&T,
you-
so
Hey, Joan,
no problem.
can you get Daniel to stop the recording so we could just, I don't know.
I just did. I stopped it.
She meant over here.
No,
There
no,
wasn't
Officially
officially,
true.
there wasn't an official report.
Thank you, guys.
The tech
Yeah,
guy,
it says recorded.
tech fella.
Tara, I just